Hello and welcome to my videocast for Dark Skies Week. My topic is dark skies in Ireland and light pollution, some imagery and measurements we can make from both the space and the ground and what it tells us about the state of the Irish sky. My point of departure is a recent ad series by Electric Ireland. So the general title is We're Brighter Together, and how nice it is to have little bright lights coming from the land so that they can be seen from space. And it uses Commander Chris Hadfield in the series. And he's known for taking many images of Ireland from space. And I wanted to reuse those images and think about what it tells us, apart from the pretty pictures, what other information we get. So first of all, let's look in the European dimension. So if we take images from space and we can make a mosaic of Europe, in this case the images from 1992, we can see the major capitals of Europe, London, Paris, Dublin, Madrid, and so on. Italy is quite bright in the Po Valley. We can see connecting roads, rail networks, and so on. And if we step through to 2010, what we can see is an increase of light overall, but more particularly if we pay attention to the rural areas, there's been an increase of light spreading into these rural areas as development improves, and partially also as technology improves and we're able to produce more light more efficiently. On average, then, there's been an increase in light everywhere, and globally its light is increasing at about 2% a year. So the light emitted to space, which would be regarded as a waste of light going out into space, about 2% per year. In terms of the Irish ranking, it's near the bottom. It's about 19th out of 29, at least partially due to our relatively small size compared to some of the bigger countries of Europe. We can also look at some of the space station imagery here: Vienna, Dublin, and Paris. So we have down here, this scatter plot shows the population on the x-axis and the light output. And we can see that, for instance, Amsterdam produces more light than Dublin, both of similar size. That's partially because of the Schiphol airport. Vienna is larger than Dublin, has a larger population, but we can see it's actually somewhat darker. So overall, Ireland ranks 16th out of 29 European cities. So we're 19th in terms of the total light output in the country context. We're 16th in terms of the city output. So what's the current situation in Ireland? Well, if we break that down and look at Irish towns here, we can see that there's a trend that as the population increases, the total light increases, partly because of increased residential lighting, but also all the other infrastructure that goes with it, the roads, the industrial estates, the shopping centres, and so on. And we can actually look at some of the space station imagery, so Tramore and Waterford down in the bottom of the image there, and moving up to Kerry, Tralee, and Killarney, we can see that we're getting brighter centres to these towns, the more tourist area, the busy area, a lot of white light being introduced, a lot of LED technology, light-emitting biotechnology. Limerick is even brighter. Again, we can see the ring roads and so on around these cities. Cork and Cork Airport, the city centre is very bright. Then we move up to Dublin, we can see that it's got an even brighter centre. There's the M50 running around it. So a lot of light develops as the population develops. And in some of these images, you can see smaller areas. So we can see populations of a few hundred people or so, and also individual lights if they're strong, quarries, people's farm yards, and so on. If that light is strong or misdirected, it's actually visible from space. So these images are taken from 400 kilometers away. So that light travels a long way into space. And if we look at the background, the historic background of the lights in Ireland, we sum up the light from the Republic and Northern Ireland, we can see that there's a big increase in the light in the Republic with development. And this increase is 10 times faster for the Republic than for Northern Ireland, and it can account for up to 70% of the local authority budget for public lighting. So what's producing the light? Well, in the city, about half of it comes from suburban areas, including some of these small shopping areas and so on. About 20% areas that are recognized as industrial and commercial, industrial estate shopping centres, and 10% from some of these condensed areas in the inner city, the really bright areas in Dublin, We have Temple Bar, for instance, that produces quite a lot of light to the total, and a few percent from government buildings and so on. So in rural areas, we have local lighting being important. Near the cities, out to about 40 kilometers away, we can still measure some light from the major. So what's the state of the Irish sky? Well, here's an image where I've actually broken the sky brightness down into different categories. So the previous images, we've been looking at light going up into space. This is an image that if we were standing on the ground, how would the sky appear? So on the western seaboard, we have skies that are relatively pristine. Now, these scales are not directly linear, but they basically indicate pristine sky, an area where there's a little bit of light. So we could see it on the horizon, for instance. But note that in the case of the western seaboard, the Wide Atlantic Way, will in general, if we're looking out to sea, we're looking away at local light sources. So the sky would still be regarded as pretty much pristine. And then the images become, the sky becomes a little bit more degraded as we move into the yellow areas, and then the Milky Way gets hard to see, and furthermore, we start to blanket out as we get into the centre of the cities. And then finally, in the white areas, the core of Belfast and quite a large proportion of inner city Dublin, people living there do not use night vision at all. They have colour vision. And it's quite apparent then when the sky is overcast, we can see colour vision just even if we stand in our own back gardens. So what does that look like in terms of the sky? Well, if we go from an inner city sky, it's very blank. There's only a few tens of stars to hundreds of stars visible. And then we move through the suburban sky out to a rural sky, maybe a little bit of light pollution, to a really dark sky site where the details of the Milky Way are easily visible. So there's quite a range in stars. And we go from, as I say, several hundred stars to dozens of stars in the inner city, down to maybe 4,000 or 5,000 stars visible at one time, potentially in a dark sky site. And what does it look like? A particular constellation, if we look at the constellation of Orion, in a city suburbs, it would look like this, whereas in the countryside, about 50 times more stars. Very, very apparent. It can actually almost be dazzling in the dark sky area. That also has an effect. So if we look on the seasonal cycles, so the moon is about 100 times brighter. The light coming from the full moon is about 100 times brighter than the light coming from the sky. But even the moon can be drowned out. So over a month in a rural background, increase in light from new moon up to full moon. And then if we look at an inner city area such as Trinity College in the centre of Dublin, we can see that there's an increase from a natural sky brightness of unity. We go up to a region where there's maybe 100 or 30 to 100 times as much light in the inner city. And then when it's overcast, it actually gets about 30 times brighter again. So there's a big increase in the light level, which masks the normal seasonal variation as well as the lunar cycle. So what's the overall condition of the skies in Ireland? Well, only about 1% has what we regard as pristine skies, about another 3%, including dark sky areas, where we'd pretty much say it was pristine. So that's about 4% of the country. And that's only 4% of the total Irish population gets to see skies. They live in the environment, they get to see skies like that on a regular basis. And at the other end of the scale, over 500,000 people, predominantly in the Dublin area, then live in areas where they never use their night vision on a regular basis. So what are we doing about this? Well, we're trying to educate more people about dark sky conditions. We're trying to work with people such as the Road Management Office so that we introduce more efficient lighting so less light is wasted out into the environment. In particular, we're trying to focus on improved light-emitting biotechnology, which is what we call a warm white type of light. So it's illustrated in the image below. So this is the type of light. It's between the old sodium lights, the low pressure are orange, and the high pressure sodium lights are sort of a pinky orange. And a lot of the LEDs that have been introduced are a little bit harsher, a little bit more blue content than what you maybe would like in your own home. So the warm white would be more comfortable area to be in. It's actually better for your health, it's better for the environment, the bats and the moths and so on, but better color rendition as well. So over the next few years, we're going to see these rolled out. So in general, what we'd recommend is, we can, by reducing the amount of energy going into wasted light, we could save money, energy, and carbon. We're very aware of our environmental credentials. So unlike the earlier picture, maybe with the electric ad, we're not thinking about it as a warm and cozy thing and energy efficient. We're actually thinking about reducing the light and actually saving energy that way. That's got to be the way you save most of your energy. So it also removes a potential stressor from the environment, particularly in this time of climate change. It lets us see the sky and relate to our culture and our heritage as well. It gives potential health benefits because there's less wasted light, there's less light going into housing and shining in bedroom windows perhaps. There's also tourism potential. So about 80% of the respondents to an Irish Times citizen science project that we led, we found that those people were interested in nighttime and night-themed events. It brings in about 400 bed nights to Mayo Dark Sky Festival. In the case of a dark sky area in Spain, it's about the only big money earner there is tourism, and it's been proven that it brings in about 2 million in terms of the dark sky tourism. It also gives us this, as I said, this connection with the sky, and the image we have here is by Ken Wilson, shows the star trails over Newgrange. It connects us with sites that have a heritage in terms of astronomical alignments. So some of these are definitely associated with sunrise and sunset. There are also ones that are associated with lunar events and may also be connected with the seasonal sky, because the people from the Bronze Age would have been very connected with agriculture and would want to know time and seasons. Also remember that for parks where we're preserving the areas, half of the time it's dark, and we should also preserve the nighttime environment for those. The good thing is that this is the only form of pollution that can be dealt with at the speed of light. So by flicking a switch, we're able to reverse the effects of this light waste. It may take a while for the environment to recover, but we can have an immediate impact on our environment just by turning lights off. So what actions can we take as individuals? Well, Dark Sky Ireland recommends we use warm white lighting rather than blue rich. We use light only around what needs to be lit, not into our neighbours' gardens, not into bedroom windows, not into the sky, and so on. We use light only where it's required, so maybe lighting the pathway rather than the whole garden. We use the minimum amount of light necessary, and again, bearing in mind if you're coming home in the dark, probably a little bit of light is better than a light that's shining in your eyes and causing glare, which actually reduces your security, creates strong dark shadows. And then have the light only on for the time that's required. Don't leave a light on in your garden, a security light, when you're inside watching television. Hopefully you have the curtains closed because you want to save heat and light. So in that case, you're not going to be able to see the garden anyway. So be polite. Dim the light. And finally, leave you with a thought from David Attenborough. No one will protect what they don't care about, and no one will care about what they have never experienced. So I hope you'll be able to get out when you do your daily exercise, at least get out and have a look up at the sky. Connect yourselves back with your environment and look up. And finally, if you're interested in the Citizen Science Project, we have the toilet roll challenge to actually go out and estimate light pollution. And the link here is at the bottom, tinyurl.com, troll-challenge. And more information can be found at www.darksky.ie.